Okay. I don't hear the music at all.
That's because it doesn't work when Neil's muted. Duh.
Okay. All right, so let's be still. So tune ourselves to the music because the music allows it is a flow. It's a continuity of harmony. So let us align ourselves in this continuity of harmony. Which this music, of course, is a expression of God, the flow of God's presence in our life. It's like just as if we were floating down a river on our backs, just completely relaxed and letting ourselves be carried, letting ourselves be carried by God, just trusting, just letting go and trusting that wherever we are being carried is perfect. And the more you can let go and just open to it, the more bliss we can feel, the more the more joy we can feel, the more faith and trusting, the more we can trust. Just trust the process of this flow. Let go and flow. On the way, of course, in this flow, it's not like we we find ourselves in moments of opening where we are directed in certain ways to do certain things. And we just go with that, just flow with that.
Call from Doctor.
That's okay. Let's just not have music, all right?
Call from
Let's
Doctor.
not, let's not. So there's also the music of silence where in stillness, in peace, we are open and receptive, responsive and obedient to guidance. So let's experience some stillness for a few moments. Thank you, God, for allowing us to have stillness so that we can be empty in order to be filled. We can empty our minds of thoughts, so many thoughts, so many distracting thoughts, and just be open to hear, to perceive, to realize what it is that you want us to do. You want what you want us to be. For we know who we are. We are spirit having a human experience. This meditation is spirit having a human experience. In the flow of your guidance, we can trust. We're at peace. We're joyful. We're faithful. We know that wherever you guide us is perfect in every now moment. Thank you. Amen. So find yourself sitting here in the chair where you are. Ready, open your eyes. We'll say thank you, God. Amen. So some of you heard what I said, but you'll pick up. I was talking a little earlier about what's going on with me, and it'll come out in the talk too. So the title of today's talk is "Trusting the Divine Process." This talk is inspired by the challenges we all face. We don't know what the future brings. However, we can trust that God is in charge and that whatever it is that is going to occur is always for our highest good. Always, 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 always. Never is it not for our highest good. Always for our highest good. And that's an incredible blessing. Every moment is an incredible blessing. Every experience is an incredible blessing. Everything is an opportunity. And that every struggle that we experience, every time we suffer in any way, it's a representation that our extremity is God's opportunity. Whatever that extremity might be, whatever that challenge might be, it's God's opportunity. In other words, it's not that God is somewhere out there giving us an opportunity. That is God within showing us that this challenge is for our benefit, and that we are to learn and unlearn what are the obstacles in the way of us experiencing God and who we really are, our true nature. What's standing in the way? Yeah. At each new step along the way, we can trust the divine process unfolding according to God's will, which is always for our highest good. So I don't know. I think I've told you guys in the past about Nasruddin, the wise Muslim trickster. He's a trickster. He teaches by tricking our minds by his stories. The Middle Eastern trickster, Nasruddin. So here's a story about Nasruddin. So Nasruddin used to cross the frontier every day with bags of straw loaded on his donkey's back. Since he admitted to being a smuggler, when he trudged home every night, the frontier guards searched him again and again. They searched his person, sifted the straw, steeped it in water, even burned it from time to time. Meanwhile, he was becoming visibly more and more prosperous. Then he retired and went to live in another country. This retired smuggler, Nasruddin the trickster. So in this other country, the officer met for coffee and said, "Hey, you can tell me now, Nasruddin, I'm not an officer, and I'm not an officer anymore. I can't arrest you now. Whatever was it that you were smuggling when we could never catch you at it? Nasruddin said, donkeys. You see, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And we can't see it. God is so obvious. We know God exists. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know God exists. We can't see God. Yet God is the most obvious thing. So metaphorically, the adverse ego, our adverse ego, is like Nasruddin, a trickster, because this false adverse ego is a false identification with our gross physical body and mind, as if that's who we really are. That's what our adverse ego tells us we are, our sense mind, bound by five senses. So we can't see the subtleties of spirit. We can't see it, just like we couldn't see that Nasruddin was smuggling donkeys. Even though we know deep down that God is obvious, the obvious reality, like Nasruddin tricks the inspectors, our false adverse ego, identity keeps veiling our true nature from us. Until we finally go, no, that's not who I am. I'm not my body. I'm not my personality. It seems like I am, but it's no, it's not who I am. No. And then, that I am spirit having a human experience. I'm not a human being having human experience. That is the illusion. That's the illusion. That's the appearance. This gross adverse ego identification keeps us unconscious of our true nature until we are greatly challenged. Challenges we face help us break through the veil of this dreamlike identification that we're bodies. And they are blessings. They're grace. And yet our ego goes, no, I'm not in control of this. It doesn't feel good. I can accept this. So then there's this fighting, resisting, not accepting what's showing up, not accepting what is. No, I can't accept that. I will not accept that. So we fight, and keep bolstering our adverse ego instead of opening to our true spiritual ego, the I am, the Christ, our perfection. That's why it said, man's extremity is God's opportunity. When we find ourselves helpless and suffering, these are the moments where it happens. Like with me right now, what am I going to do next? How am I going to make money to help support my wife? And what kind of work am I going to do? I don't know. But I know that I know that I know. I just need to trust the process, the divine process unfolding. Eventually, we learn to trust the divine process, the unfolding process of God's will. We don't shut down and go unconscious when problems show up, which is what happens a lot sometimes. We learn instead to get still and look within to the invisible subtle. The invisible subtle. As God's instruments of trust, we then have faith that what is showing up is meant to be a teaching for us. It's a perfect teaching, everyone. We stop resisting what is arising that is painful or difficult. We have the wisdom and courage to accept whatever is arising. More and more we open to trust the divine process and let God guide us every step from within out. Now, I've read many wise comments and perception. Maybe you guys know David Brooks. Remember? David Brooks? David Brooks. Very, very smart man. Very wise columnist, I think, with the Times, right? New York Times. Oh, no, the Post. Was it the Post or the Times? I don't know. The Times. I think it's the Times, yeah. Yeah, New York Times columnist. Recently, he gave a talk within which he talked about the very difficult challenges we sometimes face and how to keep on keeping on, trusting the process. Brooks said these words: I often ask people, tell me about a time that made you who you are as a human being. And they never say, oh, I went on a fantastic trip, vacation to Hawaii. They never say that. Never. They say, I went through a really hard time, the death of someone, the loss of someone, moving away from home, entering into a new vocation. I remember when my son, when we left Eugene, Oregon, before we moved to Virginia, my son was sitting in the room crying. He did not want to leave the house. It was so painful for him, so difficult. But that's what had to happen, whether it's painful or not. Eventually, he saw the grace in it. So David Brooks continues by quoting theologian Paul Tillich. However, before I quote Tillich, I'm alerting you in advance of the word Tillich uses, the word suffering. Suffering can happen when we reach a point seemingly beyond our capacity to even deal with or handle a challenge, mentally and or emotionally. And again, I mention man's extremity is God's opportunity. Sometimes that extremity feels like a great personal struggle or challenge, like it was for my son. And sometimes that extremity can feel like suffering, because my son was suffering. Anyway, I continue with Brooks, quoting Tillich. So Brooks is quoting Paul Tillich, the theologian. Quote, moments of suffering interrupt your life and they remind you that you are not the person you thought you were. In moments of suffering, you see yourself in a deeper way than you ever did before. You can either be broken, interesting words here, this one line. You can either be broken or you can be broken open. And people who are transformed decide, I'm going to be broken open. End of quote. Our extremities, big challenges, are opportunities to be broken open. Open to who we are, to know who we are. Oh, breaking open this ego, this gross, adverse ego. That's what's broken open. It's not true. The ego is a lie. It's a lie. The adverse ego is not our spiritual ego, our adverse ego. So what is broken up? It's this ego. And to know that I am, that I am. That's who I am. That's who you are. That's who we are. It's not like we're going out looking for extreme challenges to transform us. They'll come by themselves. We don't have to look. In fact, if you look for them, you're just a masochist. That's not going to work. It's just causing, as you know, the word I learned in Unity, useless, unnecessary suffering. Creating useless, unnecessary suffering for ourselves. There's a saying, there's no gain without pain. I say, there's no gain without change. Change. It's our conscious or unconscious resistance to change. That's where the suffering happens, mentally, physical, or emotionally. And that causes us to suffer. You know what? But it's okay. Suffering's all right too. It is. And everything's okay. Everything's part of the process. And having said that, at the same time, trying to ignore, resist, or avoid difficult challenges is to miss golden opportunities for personal spiritual transformation. These extremities are God's opportunities. Consider the biblical account of Joseph the dreamer. You know what? In the Old Testament, it's a tight race between Joseph the dreamer and David. You got to love David, and you got to love Joseph the dreamer. You know, Joseph the dreamer, amazing story, and it's a story about how he trusted the divine process of his dreams to guide him through some very tough times. We can trust the divine process of our dreams, of our experiences to guide us through tough experiences. Joseph, known as the dreamer, was Jacob's favorite son in the Bible, whose brothers grew jealous of him due to his special dreams, predicting their future submission to him. Oh, they didn't like that. Their egos didn't like that. They sold him into slavery into Egypt, where he eventually rose to a very high position by interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, saving Egypt from a famine by managing grain stores, and ultimately reuniting his family after years of separation, demonstrating forgiveness and God's providence through his trials. So Joseph's extremities were God's opportunities. Let me run by those. Let's run by those. These extremities that were his opportunities, that he saw as opportunities. That's the cool thing about Joseph. He didn't fight him. He just rolled with it. You've heard this saying, roll with it. He rolled with it. You know, Joseph's father Jacob openly showed favoritism toward Joseph, giving him a special coat of many colors, which fueled his brother's resentment and jealousy and anger toward him. Joseph had dreams where his family bowed down to him. He's a little bit naive, you know. Joseph a little bit naive. He didn't quite see that it was a little bit of ego going on there about, oh, I'm special. I got these dreams. And he's young. He was very young then, you know. Joseph had dreams where his family bowed down to him, which he interpreted as a sign of future dominance over his brothers. So his brothers took him out into the desert and threw him into a dry well. They're going to leave him there to die. Joseph was in this pit, and they came back, and then they sold Joseph to a caravan of traders. They sold him into slavery. They sold his brother into slavery. Come on. You're kidding me. You know, whoa. What kind of anger is that? And they all agreed to it. You know, the traders, that's how much jealousy, how powerful jealousy can be, that you can go to that extreme, right? Wow. Unbelievable. The traders then take him to Egypt, where he's sold to Potiphar, an Egyptian official. And so Potiphar's wife thought Joseph's a pretty good looking guy. She tried to hustle him, right? He wasn't buying it. She was angry. And Potiphar's wife told Potiphar that he was trying to hustle her. So they threw him into prison. He's throwing into prison, but he takes advantage of that. He's in prison, and he accurately interprets dreams of including those of Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. He told told them dreams of his jailers. So, and then the word got out to Pharaoh that this guy can interpret these dreams and knows the future. And so Pharaoh had a dream. So he asked Joseph to interpret his dream, which he interpreted that there was going to be 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine in Egypt. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appoints him as his second in command in Egypt. He goes from prisoner to second in command. Talk about rolling with it, right? Yeah. During the famine, so he manages Egypt's food and supply during the famine. During the famine, Joseph's brothers come to Egypt to buy food. Unknowingly, just like the dream, he said, they come and bow down before him for food. It's an amazing story, right? And then, because it was like Nasruddin, they had their egos had failed them from seeing that he was his brother. Then they realized, oh my God, it's my brother. And then probably thinking the worst. You can imagine what Joseph could have done to his brothers. What does he say to them? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. What an attitude is that? What kind of attitude is that? Unbelievable attitude. His brothers tried to kill him. Unbelievable. At every step along the way, Joseph did not resist even outrageously unfair treatment he had to endure. He's an example for us. Thrown into a pit to die, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and unfairly imprisoned, Joseph kept trusting the divine process, trusting that his dreams, his guidance would ultimately be fulfilled as they were, and as they will be for you and me. Every dream, every situation is perfect for us. He knew that eventually everything would end up positive and favorable, and it did. It's all about the attitude, folks. Joseph is a great example to see that our extremities are our opportunities to turn toward God within for guidance. In fact, according to those who have experienced, I call near-death experience people, I call them modern-day prophets. That's who I think they are. Because they're not theological. They have no theology. Everything they talk about is a direct experience with God they're having when their body has flatlined, and they are one with God. They are bliss in God's bliss, and it's pure God experience, near-death experience. And it's unbelievable. I am always blown away by them. They are modern-day prophets. That's my feeling. They often describe how angels or light beings tell them that, according to accounts from near-death experiences, they often describe how angels or light beings tell them that their soul had been divinely guided and assisted before their physical birth in choosing specific life goals or challenges for their upcoming incarnation. It's even a contract that they agree to, with the primary purpose of being to unlearn, learn, and grow spiritually through the experiences they would be encountering in their earthly life. One thing I kind of like make clear on near-death experiences, I've read so many of them in this regard, is it's not like they're figuring out what they needed to learn. There's these light beings are there, they're guiding them, and because we don't really know what we need to learn. We don't really know. So the light beings are guiding them. Okay, you're going into this life and you need to learn these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this incarnation. And until you do, and so what happens is they haven't, when they die, they haven't learned those lessons yet. So guess what? You got to come back. You haven't filled your contract. You haven't learned what you need to learn yet in this life. So ask yourself a question. What do I need to learn? What would be my contract? What do I yet, when we can talk about the bucket list. Yeah, that could be part of it. A bucket list. I want to go skydiving. And my son and I are going to go skydiving. I'm going to do that. I have a lady friend who's a church here. She skydived at 83. She skydived. I mean, that's one thing. But is skydiving what I'm supposed to learn? I think I'm just for fun. Could be. Maybe the skydiving helps me get past fear. I don't know. Right? Maybe this whole thing with me, the ministry's over for me. I don't know what that means. This extremity is my opportunity. What's next? I don't know. I got to trust the process. I got to trust it. But do we need to have a near-death experience? Do we need to have a near-death experience? Let me tell you a story about a nurse at a hospital who she, for some reason, drew a lot of people in the hospital who had near-death experiences. And she talked to quite a few of them and learned from them. So one time a lady had surgery and had died on the table, had flatlined for a period of time, and then was revived. And so she visited her room to ask her if she had an NDE. So she asked the lady, what happened during your, when you were unconscious in surgery? And the lady said, I was very disappointed. Why? I didn't have a near-death experience. I was thinking I would have one, but I didn't have one. The nurse said to her, "You didn't need an NDE. You already have that knowledge. We don't need an NDE. We just need the knowledge." The NDE, the near-death experience, brings knowledge through the experience. You know, I think that's an important point to make. You don't need to die and come back to learn lessons. We die every time our ego dies, and we grow through that. We have many deaths in our lives, deaths and rebirths. We don't have to have an NDE, but we can learn from people, learn from them, absolutely, because they're in a pure space when they share their experiences. So the overarching theme here is that choosing life experiences before birth is a way for souls to evolve spiritually by navigating challenges and learning lessons from the situations encountered while in the physical body, for them and for us. These goals include the work of overcoming specific difficulties, developing particular character traits, serving others in a meaningful way. In fact, the reason they return after their near-death experience is because they did not fulfill certain previously agreed upon birth objectives. Okay, let me just say this. When we have our sharing after the talk, I'm going to ask you what are things that you think you need to learn? Yeah, you haven't learned yet in this life. And you can share or not share that. It's entirely up to you, But watch out for Nasruddin the trickster. Watch out for the Nasruddin-like trickster, the adverse ego who veils the truth by telling you that you are only a human being having a human experience, when in truth you are spirit having a human experience. You are divine. You are divinity itself. And I'll close by a quote from Dan Millman, the author of Way of the Peaceful Warrior. He said, "So trust the divine process of your life unfolding and know with certainty through the peaks and valleys of your journey that your soul rests safe and secure in the arms of God." End of quote. Grow for it. End of talk.